All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the February 23rd, 2021 instance of the SIG Windows community meeting for Kubernetes. As always, these videos are recorded and uploaded, so just make sure you adhere to all the CNCF code of conduct and also just be nice in general. All right, let's get started. So we've got some more updates on the KEPs. This has been kind of ongoing. But I think kind of wrapping this up, at least for 121 for now. So the current status is, and I know this is discussed in Slack. I'm not sure if the tracking spreadsheets have been updated or not. But I need to keep working with the release lead to get those updated. The status is, so the privileged containers KEPs, I believe on Wednesday, we were able to get consensus with all of the different SIGs, and that got merged. And on Thursday, the release lead for 121 granted the exception we requested, and are going to allow that into the 121 release for an alpha status. For the node KEP log, even going into last week, there was a lot of discussion about if this should be made more general, and then more questions about the security aspect of this, which we believe were already answered. And there's just a lot of discussions still going on with this. So I think the decision right now is to use the rest of 121 to get this KEP into a state that everybody agrees on, and hopefully work towards implementing this in an alpha in 122. Arvin has been doing a great job for this. I think he has an ask, and that is for if anybody is kind of would, if folks could comment on the KEP PR about how this could be used for Windows, I think that would help. Or like, and about how they plan on using it. I think that would help kind of clarify some use cases that folks not familiar with Windows might have, and might help drive this along. Arvin, did you have anything else you wanted to say about this KEP?
I think, Mark, you captured most of it. The key bit of contention is, like, Clayton wants a bunch of features added, even on the pod log side, and he thinks that given that it'll cause a mismatch between pods and nodes, it needs to be done as part of this KEP. So I'll call something out there. The thing that I'm finding it hard to normalize is Tim Hawken wants no differentiation, like the user does not need to know whether they are going to pull from a log file or from a service. He wants that to be sort of transparent, and which makes it really hard, right? Because it's almost like saying that you need to know information about the kubelet service and the fact that it's logging to varlog, I don't know, kubelet.log, which could be anywhere, right? You could set up your kubelet service to log pretty much anywhere that you want. So that's where it's a little, I'm not sure how to address that bit.
From a support standpoint, I think that's not a great plan anyway, because that implies that people are going to be using this to get around knowing anything about where the logs are being generated. And if you're making it completely invisible, you've got to have a way of being able to make it make it visible so that you can pick out where the issues are. Whereas if it was completely invisible, you could find a mention in the log and not know where it came from.
Yeah, I think the point is more like, if you're looking at kubectl node and you want the kubelet log, the person trying to get the kubelet log shouldn't be aware whether it's being logged to a file or it's being logged, like, I don't know, in the Windows case, ETW, or the journal logs in the Linux case. I think the thing that Tim is pointing out is I don't think he's happy with the fact that we need to differentiate between a file and whether you're pulling it from a service.
Yeah, so I think the KEP right now, you would say, like, I want to pull this log file from, var, like, that lives and is nested under var log, or you can point it to a service name. And for Windows, that would fire off the ETW query for that kind of service log name, and on Linux, it would query journald. So I think the question is, how do we make it so that the users don't need to know if things are getting logged to just a generic text file or a service? And I think that's a very difficult question.
Yeah.
especially because there could be so many different configurations, like node configurations, like who knows exactly what's going to be running on the service or like on the nodes. Every cluster shape is going to be different.
It sounds similar to the question I got in Slack the other day about AKS, and it was like, where's the start kubelet PS1 file for that? And I was like, I don't know. Turns out it's in C drive program files, EKS bootstrap .ps1. So it's the same kind of question, right? Could be
Yeah,
anywhere.
I actually got that question first, and I directed them to SIG Windows, and maybe you. But yeah, I was like, I'm familiar with how Azure sets it up, but I don't know how the services are set up. Like every single cluster could potentially be different here. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or extra comments that'd be good. I don't know. Is there more that we can discuss here, or
not really, Mark? I'm just putting it out there so that if there are folks here who feel like, you know, it doesn't matter, it's fine if it's different, this is still a useful feature, they should comment if they feel that way. That would help us.
Yeah. And thank you so much for helping to drive this, Arvind.
Oh, no worries. I'll continue doing it.
Yep.
I have a quick general thought that I've been having a lot lately, because in SIG Network, we've started moving on the policy side. You know, we have a lot of stuff coming down the pike, and we go back and forth between the idea of at what point do we just make a Kubernetes -SIGs like set of extended tools that, you know, we can use. And like with the Windows stuff, sometimes I feel like between the conformance tests that we've been talking about trying to figure out a solution to, and then between now we've got logging here, and then we've got some of the security context stuff, I just like, and we've got the SIG Windows tools repo. I wonder at some point if we think outside the box about building our own like thing, you know what I mean? Like that, like building our own tools that are really, really, really good at the thing that we care about. You know, and I know there's tons of consequences to that, but I just, all this stuff, I keep thinking of it like we could build something so useful if we just, if we could combine some of these concepts into like our own Swiss Army knife, you know what I mean, of tooling. But I don't know how we would do that. But just a general thought.
I mean,
yeah, I think in this case, if if it was potentially just kubectl updates, we could maybe make a plugin for that and host it in there. But this really needs features enabled and code enabled in the kubelet too. So I don't know how to reconcile that either with how do we put together a useful solution in SIG Windows tools without actually being able to do some of the updates needed to enable those.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, we do have SIG Windows tools, and I think that might be a little bit underutilized. So if anybody has any ideas on how to, like for projects that would be a good candidate for that, I think.
Well, I mean, I think the big bang for the buck would be if we could find a large set of things that are just floating around that we can't get first class support for, and somehow make something that's easy to maintain and easy for people to access, you know, where they don't have to memorize like what secret tool they have to use, you know what I mean? But this is all just, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I see that it's probably not possible for this one, but.
Good idea though. All right. Next is, I'm not sure who added this agenda item.
It was me.
James, you want to take a quick, or you want to have a go at this?
Yeah. So we cut over to the promoter image repository, the GCR promoter image repository last week. That caused quite a bit of failures in our tests. The two notable ones are the HTTPD, which we have a fix for, and we actually even have a general idea of what's going on there. The other one was the Nginx image is failing, and so I was looking into it a little bit, and the image copies directly from your Nginx image. So our Kubernetes image just pulls this image and then copies it over. And so I was just wondering, I couldn't find the source for this.
Yes.
So I was hoping to get a little pointer there.
It's failing. Interesting. So there was a reason for that Nginx image. I didn't find any 64-bit Nginx available on the entire internet. So I built one. And this was already known. I've talked about this during a previous SIG Windows meeting and said, hey, if you want to use Nginx on a nano server based image, there you go. So yeah, it was supposed to be working, and I
Yeah,
have no
it looks
idea what
like
happened.
that image on Docker Hub got updated 14 days ago, and since then, if you just pull the image, even with not through Kubernetes, it just doesn't boot.
That the tag that it's being used when building the images, or just some tag, because I'm still using that registry for my own images, but those tags which are being used, let's say officially, I've never touched them since.
Do we know which
So
tags those are specifically, James?
Yeah, so if you
Yeah.
pull any of the latest 114-Alpine or 118-Alpine or 119, they all don't boot.
Yay.
So
We'll also take a look.
If we can get whatever you built, like you said you built your own, can we get that maybe into like SIG testing or SIG tools repositories so that we could, if something like this happens again, we're able to.
Sure,
build it
basically
ourselves.
just contains the Nginx binary.
Yeah.
It's nothing fancy, but sure.
I'll drop in the link for the open issue that we have for it.
Basically, my Nginx should have something like 118 and 119 tags, which are not being used in testing. It's not being built by Kubernetes or anything else. Those are just normal tags there. And basically, it's just two different Nginx versions.
So the one we're using right now, we copied from EDE team, Docker Hub. So I was wondering if there's any difference between the Nginx test image in EDE teams and the one in your Docker Hub.
I'd say no. When I build stuff, I build on my own registry for obvious reasons. And then when I told SIG Windows, hey, you can use that Nginx image, I put it on the E2E team because maybe people don't want to use an image called clouddevelop/Nginx, you know.
Yeah, but the weird thing is that when we use the Nginx image from EDE team, it works. And then if we use the one from the promoter, the test case just keeps failing. So yeah, we can take this offline.
Yeah, the promoter one's pulling from your Claude registry, not from EDE tests. So maybe we need to switch that over. But it would be nice to have the source as well.
Perhaps, yeah. Looking at my own registry, the 118 tag was published 7 months ago. So it wasn't been updated since. It should probably be updated to use the E2E team one.
All right, yeah, let's continue to this one offline. It seems like there's just a couple of folks that really can take action here. But yeah, let's maybe try and move this all over to the EDE team repository. I think are all of these issues, especially the ones you just linked, James, these are all related, right?
Yeah, they're all related to switching over to that promoter registry. And at the time, we didn't have an answer on the HTTPD permissions stuff, but we got an answer last night, so we don't have to talk about it here.
Okay, sounds good. The next item was, which is kind of related is we merged the PR that James did to reorganize or to add a new board on test grid for our CI signal. So right now there's some issues. This is what we were discussing on the 15 minutes prior to the community meeting, but this is a good place to look. These are the dashboard, or these are all the test passes that the release team will look at and help us, and kind of ping us if there's any issues. So I'm glad that this merged. This makes it easier to kind of focus on what the release team will look at. So thank you very much, James. Does anybody have any questions about this? I think our goal going forward is going to be to keep these test passes green. Obviously we want to keep all of them green, but we'll prioritize these over all of the rest of the Windows ones first, and then we'll after the signal goes green, we'll look at the rest of the test passes. All right, next is Perry and Jay. I think you had a call out here.
Yeah, we had a couple of stragglers. What do we got here? Yeah. So quick ping. I mentioned this in upstream channel. The policy stuff. I've got it like working. We've got the tests running and they're pretty stable for us for the most part. So that means I'm going to be removing the Linux only tags from them. And so I had two questions. One is for the folks in the room that host CNIs and stuff. Do you all have roadmap for when you all are going to support network policies on Windows with either Calico or Antrea or using Azure CNI or any other? Like, I just wanted to get a quick pulse of how many people are actually going to support that as a feature, like in production. Or if nobody, that's fine. I'm just.
Yeah, there has been some loose requests on the OpenShift side. I mean, in general, right, there's always the question about when it comes to Windows, they'll always ask us, oh, can you not do this feature that Linux supports? So network policy comes under that. We haven't prioritized all of that, but stuff like this, I think our intent should be to always try and, capture sort of feature parity with Linux.
Okay.
If not immediately, but eventually.
All right, cool. So, if you want, I have a lot of people over at your place, Arvin, certainly have helped us with that, and understand at least a decent amount about how to use those tests. We've run them with OVN, Kubernetes, and stuff as well, and as far as proving them out. So, that would be, yeah, I'd love to know more if people are running it in production, but if not, I guess this is just a warning that my plan was to remove the Linux only tag from those tests and hopefully find a way to start running them. I assume I'm going to have to put skip tags in places per James's thing. But so am I going to break stuff when I remove that Linux only tag? Am I going to break CI stuff, Ravi or Claudio, or does anybody know, James?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Could if you remove the Linux only tag, could you possibly add
Skip the policy test? Yeah.
Some type of other tag which we can then use in the skip regex for the other jobs which do not support network policies?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So
is there not already a netpol skip?
There's not, because it's usually relying on Linux only. So I guess in the future we probably should rely on Linux only as little as possible and be more explicit about what we're skipping. But that's
those regexes are already not the prettiest.
Yeah.
So maybe after all of the CI signal is green, that could be another area that we can kind of swarm on, is going through and figuring out what a concrete or concise set of tags is and actually updating the tests and cleaning that up.
Well, this goes back to the other thing. I was wondering, in Elver and SIG network, we have now service conformance, and we're thinking about a network policy conformance. And I'm wondering whether this is one example of one of those things where we do a Kubernetes SIG Windows conformance, and we just have our own tests that we know are really awesome. I mean, that's what I would like to have the most, right? Rather than jumping around the Ginkgo stuff to find bugs in the images and other things that I don't care about. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We did that with the network policy stuff, and we just made our own stuff, and people find it so useful, you know, because it's a tool that actually solves the problem of knowing whether policies work or not, as opposed to spending all of our time trying to figure out what dance we need to do to get something merged into E2E, you know. I mean, we did get it into E2E, but we were very close to just going. Anyways, yeah, we could talk about that later. Okay.
Should I add that to a future agenda item, either going through and cleaning up the test tags or the Windows networking conformance, network policy conformance? I think that
I mean, I think it's a broader, feel free to, I feel like it's a broader question of Windows conformance to me, of just, let's have some awesome tests that always work, that only use one image or two images that we all agree on, you know? That's the way I, but that actually print out useful stuff, you know, like, but I don't know, there's a lot. One quick thing, I mean, is this a potential sub project, like a testing release working group for Windows? Like, is it that big of a problem, or am I the only person that sees this as something that really we should really focus on a lot?
I think it could go either way. I think that especially if there's kind of an effort to get more the test results from more cloud providers onto test grid for Windows, that could be a big benefit there.
Yeah.
Or more, I should not even say cloud providers, but more infrastructure providers.
I'll propose it in the upstream Slack channel and see if anybody might be interested in possibly rallying around going a little deeper. But yeah, okay. So Docker images 99360, I guess, and Perry, you had a couple here, right? The containerd, Active Directory, kernel stuff.
Yeah, it was 99360. Was that the one I raised this morning about the pause build? There's a public Docker image in the pause build for Windows, the Docker cross or doc cross or whatever. That image pulls from Docker Hub, and when I tried to do a build on a build server, it died. So yeah, I just raised the issue, but I wasn't really sure how I go about adding like those images into kates.gcr, or whether we can, or whether there's a reason why it wasn't already. So that was kind of, I just raised the issue. I think I tagged Dims and you, Claudio, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I'm a bit surprised you've hit the rate limiting from Docker Hub. I've been building probably hundreds of images, I never hit
it's
that.
probably because I'm building them on a shared build infrastructure inside of VMware, so that's just gonna there'll be some that probably comes from like a group of VIPs that VMware have somewhere that then goes into Docker Hub and blows up. I would think.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. We actually mirrored quite a few Docker images to the Kates registry. For example, the HTTPD image, the Nginx image, Perl image, BusyBox image, and a few others which were commonly being used in E2E tests. But for this, we haven't. Typically for image builders and so on and so forth, which run infrequent, there wasn't really a need from the view of the image builder itself. But
I think Cube Cross has been done already, so this is just the Windows equivalent of Cube Cross.
If you actually find a Cube Cross equivalent on GCR.io, definitely send a pull request for that. But in this case, I think you can just solve your issue by just doing a Docker login. Because you basically have Docker offers a rate limit for anonymous users and a different rate limit for authenticated users. So if you authenticate, you basically have a different quota.
Okay, I'll talk about that with you, Jay, internally, and just see if we can do a Docker login on those build servers because I don't know if we could, but I can try.
And the reason is that we don't want to put these into k8s.gcr. Is that the idea? Or is it?
Oh, I don't. So there's a big umbrella issue which states that we should no longer rely on Docker Hub images. And one of the sub issues was for E2E tests. I think this one could also easily fit there as well.
Okay.
Now how to do it, I don't know.
Seems like maybe like this is kind of internal, but yeah, it seems like Perry, we could just cache in our internal thing for now. And then
Which I've done. I've basically just downloaded and done a cache, but I'm just thinking in future I'd rather not have to put in a step that downloads one in a proxy cache and then uses that. I'd rather have just this sort of mimic Windows, Linux, sorry.
Claudio, yeah. So Claudio sounds like he'd be supportive of eventually getting this into GCR anyway. So maybe we just start an upstream initiative around that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
I'm happy
I
to do
mean,
that.
it's not depending on me. I do not decide everything that's happening on Kubernetes yet. But I think there's a case for this as well, so you can easily propose this and get this in. For example, after the SIG Windows meeting, there's a SIG testing. You can also propose this there. So Aaron Krickenberger and Ben Yelder, they would probably approve your request for this.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask, and this does seem like a reasonable request.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll take that one then.
We'll keep that 99360 issue open as a placeholder for that, I guess, if that's okay. Makes sense to you guys.
And then I think you answered this earlier, James or Mose. I think I was asking whether that patch had gone in, and I think James, you sent me a link to just say that the GSMA Windows update for Containerd, that update went in. Is that right?
So I just pasted the link in the chat. I think this is one of the most asked. So Mark, do you want to paste this in the notes as well? I confirmed it with the servicing team with the WSD. It is part of it. The reason there is no release notes, if you look at it, there won't be any release note, is it's a little bit confusing for general users, right? Like it's a very specific scenario about SMB shares using CCG. So it was better not to release it, with the notes, but it has definitely made it. So it is 2C. So the B patches are all only security. The non-security updates are usually C.
So that means it'll be included in the 3B update.
Correct.
Which should get automatically applied, or which you can download and will be kind of a recommended update. But if you want it sooner, you can manually install the 2C update, which will not be kind of showing up as a manual or as a recommended update.
Is it possible just to, in the notes here or somewhere, just to say exactly which KB we need to install and whatever?
Yeah, the KB number is there. The KB number.
Yeah, that's the link that Muzz did.
Oh,
cool.
If you
open that up, that I just added.
Is there a stupid way to check that it's there? Like, check that update is there without installing it? You
can. I mean, I've got a PowerShell module that I just do get Windows update, and it just shows me it's there. And
you can do WinVer and look at this will be the minor version. If your Windows version, at least on Windows Server 2019, is 10.0.17763.1790 or greater, you'll have this fix. The servicing patches are always increasing. So the 3B one, which will come out next week, will be higher, or in a couple weeks will be higher. We'll have the higher patch version.
Is there a way to look for it without knowing the version number? Like, is there a thing that's on there? No.
So a while, there used to be individual, these updates used to be cumulative, or these updates used to be roll-up packages, which contained individual KBs that you could check to see, hey, there's 1 KB, and the package would include many of them. But I actually have no idea of the reason why, but now there's just single KB packages that are installed, and there's no way, you kind of just have to know what's in it. There's no way to check if you have specific things.
And there's nothing a file we can look for, or grep for, or something like that.
I don't think so, but I don't know for sure.
All right, that's fine. I'm just still learning how this Windows stuff works, so I don't know, man. whatever.
Yeah, I think like 10 years ago, you used to be able to do that, but not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's probably
must
in
admit,
the binary.
I must admit, I was expecting a KB number that just says this batch is the one. So I'm bad day as well.
Yeah.
That's fine. Is it worth then, once the next update comes out in 2C, once we got a KB, I'm quite happy to update the docs with the, for if you want GSMA support on Windows, on Containerd, you need to apply this KB number, but I guess right now it's probably not worth it if it's not a main update.
Yeah. I mean, we could update it now and say, but yeah, it might make more sense to do it in in early March.
If someone gives me a shout and says it's in this, I'm quite happy to go in and update the website if if people want me to do that. It's fine.
All right. All right, anything else for this? I've got one thing to update and then I'm going to drop for the SIG node meeting. This is more of just an FYI, but we discovered an issue with Containerd and any storage plugins that mount disks. So this is Azure Disk and probably the Google PD driver. With Containerd and Windows, there's more details in there, but basically the way Containerd tries to evaluate symlinks kind of requires that a volume has a drive letter associated with it, and in all of the common mount libraries, we don't add that there. So
yeah, I discovered, I think, same or similar issue in StepPass. So I fixed there. I'm not sure this can be fixed similar way. Basically, I replaced evaluate symlink call with some PowerShell commands like get pass, like item.
Yeah, this eval symlink call is getting kind of executed in either Containerd or one of the shim plugins. So I don't know if we can fix this in any Kubernetes components or not, which is why I created a separate issue. We'll need to keep working on this to figure out the appropriate place and way to resolve this.
So does this mean CSI is broken across any Containerd?
If you are certain plugins are, like Azure Disk is, because Azure Disk will mount a disk to a VM, provision the disk, and then create a volume on the disk and then link to that volume. But Azure File, which uses an SMB share, is not. So it really depends on kind of the underlying operations of the driver.
The details are, if it doesn't have a drive letter, it's pretty much broke in Containerd.
If it's a new volume on a new disk that gets added to the node, yes.
New volume on a new disk with no drive letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking about volumes and mappings and subpaths and symlinks and so on and so forth, I also had an issue which I discovered on Containerd itself regarding symlinks and so on and so forth, which may cause for some people to have some failures. So I've linked that in chat. And I've also sent a fix for something like this in Kubernetes itself, which is this one. And there's also an issue on Kubernetes that's linked on the pull request itself. Apparently, there are certain scenarios in which if you have symlinks in the subpath you are mounting as a volume in a pod, basically the pod will not be able to start. The container will not be able to start because of that, because of how the symlink is evaluated in HCS shim. But that has been fixed in HCS shim, as far as I know. But that has to be ported to Containerd as well. So basically, it's a two-part fix for this bit. So just
all right, we'll
FYI.
get those. I'll get those links added to the notes too. That's good to call out.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to drop. I'm going to make James the host. If people want to continue discussing, feel free.
Basically, how I got over those issues, I was trying to remove some Linux-only tags from a couple of tests, which would basically enable them from containerd, which is this pull request. And two of the tests were failing because of the symlink issue I've mentioned. Just in case you've encountered something similar.
So I think before I raised the issue for Windows about eval symlink function, and they had a huge discussion, but it's still kind of someone proposed something, but it's not approved. So it seems like they are just trying to document eval symlink will not work for Windows. There are some details in that discussion. I can also put the link somewhere.
Yeah, if you can drop a link to that, either in the doc or.
Yeah, I will put the link in the doc and also maybe the PR or the issue here.
Cool. Is there any other topics?
Nope, nothing for me.
For anybody that wants to dive into the containerd stuff, we are having a call with the Microsoft folks in a little bit today. Just FYI around CNI stuff. I didn't get a chance to add every single person here, but for folks that really want to dive into it, just ping me in upstream Slack SIG Windows, and I'll post it.
You cannot post the link in SIG Windows Slack?
I can just post it. Yeah. I just figured if nobody else wanted to go, I didn't want to like feel like I was adding people to a meeting they didn't want to be at. But yeah, I'll just post it when we start.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to bring up is related to what Jay was talking about earlier, which is related to having conformance tests. So there is this conformance working group which actually has said in the past that the conformance tests are specific to Linux. We do not have anything which is Windows specific. So I think that is something that can be started as a project. I just want to second Jay's thoughts there. So they have told it in the past that they are specific.
Oh, Jing. Okay, sorry. There we go.
Yeah.
So there is an open issue for this too. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Adelina started the conversation at one point. So I'll see if I can find the open issue there.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. Please share it with me.
Yeah, there is that open issue. It's kind of lingering because it's like it wound up being this thing where there wasn't really, I feel like that issue angles towards nobody really, from what I can tell, cares enough to like actually accommodate the things that we really need to have an awesome Windows verification experience for Kubernetes users, right? Like there's certain things that certain people will allow us to do, but this is why I feel like we should talk about this offline, Ravi, or anyone else, like the idea of like a Windows tooling or testing subgroup or something that actually is actively working on solving this problem for us in a way that like makes it really easy to like verify that a Windows cluster is doing the right thing, and so that we're spending less time jumping through hoops and more time actually verifying the core functionality. Because I see a lot of our testing efforts are spent getting accidental things to work properly, as opposed to actually verifying the real bugs that I'm worried about customers seeing in production.
True.
That's kind of how I feel like I'm spending. I feel like I'm, and I feel like we had the same problem with the network policy stuff, right? We had all these tests that were just, they weren't really telling us what was wrong with our CNIs. They were just telling us what was wrong with the tests. So
yeah, the other thing that I want to ask you, Jay, is what is the CNI plugin that we are using for the network policy test? Is it Flannel or is it Calico? What were we using there?
Well, what we wound up doing there was we wrote a KEP around creating a standard around network policies. And then we implemented that as a tool. And then we got all the policy providers to use it. And then we found that every policy provider is totally broken in different places once we started actually exercising it at large scales. And that,
to be clear, what all plugins did you use?
Any CNI plugin you use, you're going to find network policy issues. So, but the overall test framework is actually in upstream Kubernetes, but we were like inches away from going out of tree, just so that we could get it standardized and get it to live somewhere. And initially we lived in Antria, but it's not CNI dependent, right? It verifies that policies work. And we've built other tools around it that will automatically test Cilium and other things. And we have a working group for that, but, and we're working on publishing results for that. But right now we mostly use it, like we use it with Oven Kubernetes to find issues. We've used it for Antria to find a lot of issues. We've found some issues in Calico. Calico tends to be the best. But that's just one example. I feel like we've got that with Windows. We just haven't, like, I feel like we're, but yeah, I don't know. We should talk about this offline.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we've lost most folks at this point, so
cool.
Maybe start something in Slack and invite anybody that's interested. So that.
Wait, am I missing another? Sure. I think I might be missing another meeting, so I definitely have to drop. See y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have, James. You can take back.
Okay, cool. Thank you. See y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.